Can you tell me the story of your childhood?
It's definitely outside the scope of the norm. Well, today, maybe not 150 or 200 years ago, but my parents, highly intelligent, people coming out of the Bay Area. My mom was, going to school to be a chemical engineer. She was a top student athlete, graduated out of her school. My father was a member of Mensa. My stepfather was just a genius, but not able to really function in society. But my mom was, she had some demons and some other stuff, and she just said one day, she's like, I just don't want to be part of society. She still isn't. Lives out in the desert, but has her minds. But she wanted to figure out a way to make a life outside of that. And so that's where we ended up, is up in the mountains in Northern California. And a lot of that was, them trying to get into successfully growing marijuana, which back in that, wasn't legal back then, highly illegal. And in fact, those areas some of the areas where we lived were quite dangerous. So there's a documentary, Murder Mountain, that came out recently. If you watch that, you'll tie into my book, just the understanding of the stuff that I was talking about, dealing with serial killers, human trafficking, police corruption, murderers, like just how real that stuff is if it doesn't capture you from the book. Okay.
The book, by the way, is The Eagle and the Dragon.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's a great
I'm
one.
a terrible salesperson, like I told you.
But it's a good title. I don't know if you came up with it, but
I did. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll talk about that anyway.
We're living by a stream, off a meadow. There's no roads into where you have to hike in. And we've got beams lashed into the trees up above us because that's where our bedding is, because there's rattlesnake dens all around. And 6 years old, I'm being taught how to capture and handle live rattlesnakes, because that's what I need to do to be safe. And you can imagine 6 years old sitting there with a live rattlesnake in your hand, grabbing it, by the side of the head, controlling so it can't bite you. And it's just wrapping itself around your arm, and you're staring at it, like its only intent is right then is to kill you. Mm-hmm. Like that's it, right? You want to take a bath, it's filling up the jug in the stream and setting it out on the rocks during the sun so you can dump it over your head. And, not all the living was that way. Good part was similar to that, tent living in a 16-foot trailer with a family of 6, which is not much bigger than the space that we're sitting here. So we're talking hard winters with feet of snow on the ground, nowhere to go. I'm living in the back of the pickup truck in just a standard sleeping bag that we get from the Salvation Army, not the below zero. So I'm not sleeping well. There's living in homes that were maybe condemned. There's no doors even on them, no electricity or running water, or one or the other or both, and sometimes a little bit better. By the time we got to high school, we had a mobile home. So my stepfather had won a disability payment because he had a broken arm that whole time from a accident a long time ago, and finally got an award and got a down payment on this mobile home that didn't have, again, doors on the inside. It did have running water. It did have electricity. Didn't have a kitchen. The windows would crank close and open, but they wouldn't close all the way. So trim them in with plastic to be able to try to protect from the elements. That was my environment, like learning how to forage for mushrooms. I mean, there were summers I would send, my parents would be out. They were in the drug trade earlier. We got taken by the police and put into foster care for a while, which ties into some of the stories with human trafficking. And honestly, it's in my book, but it's really hard for me to talk about that stuff. And obviously not all that's in the book. So, but they got us back. We moved to Oregon, and they stayed out of the drug trade from that time to ensure that they didn't lose us again. But quickly, we kind of fell back into the same thing. So at that point, it was learning about geology and starting to do mining and firewood cutting, but mostly the mining because Pat's broken arm chainsaw made it a little tough.
If you remember just the sequence of moments, do you are you haunted by the darker moments of your childhood? Do you remember moments of simple joy and happiness?
Outside of the living around dangerous people and the interactions that came from that, we were a family. Like, we were a cohesive unit battling against the world together. We spent all our time together, work, play. I was there. I was helping raise my siblings, or I was working with them. And, it was a constant. Like I said, we were very physically active. So, I had that in my upbringing. Plug for my shoe company, Barefoot, BEAR. I ran around the wilderness in bare feet all the time, but it was, I had a lot of great moments, and I'm thankful for a lot of that childhood once we take out the trauma and the other stuff associated with it, right? And so the connection that I have with my sisters is huge. That goes a bit further because I am kind of like a little bit of a father figure, because I was at home raising them, and then later I took custody of them while I was going to school because the environment at home deteriorated further. Their stepfather, like I said, he wasn't capable of managing life, and my mom had a mental breakdown and took off to Montana, and he descended into madness, even worse. Actually took my 13-year-old sister and kicked her out in the middle of winter, a couple feet of snow on the ground, because he thought she stole his favorite cereal bowl. Type. So yeah, that's when I took in, and I was going to college, putting myself through college, and I started taking custody of my sisters and raising them. So anyway, we're still like very, very tight family. There was a few years later in life, like, that the connection with my mother was kind of broken. I didn't speak to her for years because of her basically abandoning my sisters and me having to come in, but that we've worked through that as best we can.
So anger on your part?
It wasn't, there might've been some anger.
Did you always love her?
Yes. And I still do. And she's taught me basically everything I know about strength and perseverance and living life on your terms and being able to create that. And so much of what I am is from that, right? We've all had to learn to be okay with the way she is, because she is just blunt. But, she's the one that figured out that the human trafficking situation and got the DA involved and got all the, she's the one that I've learned a lot from her